It started with a video. Not a trailer, not an announcement, just a clip, raw, unexpected, and powerful enough to shift the spotlight of the entire internet in under a minute. No warning, no build-up. Just a sudden drop from 50 Cent on one of his social media accounts, followed by stunned silence, and then an explosion. In the video, the camera pans across a dimly lit private room. Loud music leaks in from somewhere off-screen, but the real attention is on the people inside. Diddy, Usher, and Justin Bieber are seated close together, too close, surrounded by expensive bottles and distant laughter. Their expressions are unreadable, yet something feels off. Not scandalous, not yet. Just, uncomfortable. It's the body language. The way Usher leans in, murmurs something, and Justin looks away like he didn't want to hear it. The way Diddy sits too still, too quiet, only nodding, his eyes drifting from one to the other, calculating. Nothing is said that can be heard clearly, but that's what makes it worse. That's what makes it viral. Because silence leaves room for imagination, and the internet's imagination is always wild. It didn't take long before the clip spread beyond 50 Cent's post. People were ripping it, slowing it down, captioning it with subtitles they made up, treating it like a piece of lost evidence from a true crime docuseries. Forums lit up. Reddit threads went into full detective mode. Old stories were dug up. Timelines were built. Photos of past parties, screenshots from interviews, even lyrics from old songs, everything was being connected. Fans started asking hard questions. Why did Usher look so uncomfortable? Why did Justin seem distracted, or scared? What was Diddy saying that the camera couldn't pick up? No one knew what was really going on, and that's exactly why everyone wanted to know. And through it all, 50 Cent didn't delete the clip. He didn't clarify anything either. He let it sit there, loud and quiet at the same time, like a match waiting for someone to throw it into dry grass. The reaction wasn't just viral, it was volcanic. Within hours, every major platform was ablaze. Twitter was flooding with clips, each one slowed to 0.5x speed and filled with bold red circles, arrows pointing at facial expressions, timestamps flashing across the screen. TikTokers began stitching the video into speculative commentary, many of them whispering dramatically as if what they were watching was forbidden. YouTubers uploaded breakdowns titled things like, "The Party That Changed Everything," or, "What Justin's Eyes Were Saying." People weren't just watching, they were studying it like it was surveillance footage. The original audio was barely audible, but that didn't matter. Users created AI-enhanced sound, subtitles based on lip reading, and whole threads where people were certain they knew what was being said behind the muffled chatter. That's when older stories began to resurface. Interviews from years ago, stories that once felt like harmless throwbacks, now took on a more sinister tone. People remembered when Usher had mentioned staying with Diddy as a teenager. They brought up Justin Bieber's early exposure to adult Hollywood parties. These weren't fresh revelations, but now, viewed through the lens of this one clip, everything felt loaded. Familiar footage was replayed with new meaning. Smiles that once looked warm now seemed tense. Jokes that once landed light now sounded like coded language. In the eyes of the public, it wasn't just a party, it was a window into something deeper, something hidden in plain sight. Still, no one involved had said a word. No press releases, no denial, not even a meme or distraction post. And that silence was louder than anything. The public doesn't wait for answers anymore. In the vacuum of official explanation, people built their own truths. And in those truths, Diddy wasn't just a host, he was a symbol. Usher wasn't just a guest, he was a survivor. And Justin? Justin was the one everyone worried about. That clip, in just a few minutes, rewrote public memory. It recontextualized years of appearances, tweets, photos, and interviews. What once was dismissed as celebrity randomness was now framed like a slow-burning revelation finally coming to light. And at the center of it all was 50 Cent, who hadn't posted anything else. No follow-up. No comment. Just the video, sitting like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Then came the noise. Media outlets, gossip channels, and talk shows pounced like vultures. By the end of the day, the clip had been replayed on every major entertainment platform. But it wasn't just tabloids running wild, real journalists started asking questions. What was the context of the party? When was this recorded? Why did 50 Cent have this footage? And most importantly, why release it now? Theories spread faster than facts. Some claimed it was a power move, a strategic play to bury Diddy in public opinion. Others whispered that 50 knew something darker, something far worse than what the video showed. That the clip was only the beginning, a warning shot before the real secrets dropped. Behind closed doors, the industry was panicking. PR teams were working overtime. Lawyers were making calls. Everyone who had ever been to a Diddy party, everyone who had shared a stage with Usher or collaborated with Bieber, suddenly went silent or started issuing vague statements about respecting privacy or standing with survivors. You could feel it, the fear. Something had cracked, and now there was no containing the leak. Insiders started whispering to blogs under anonymity. Some said this clip was just one of many. Others said this was personal, that 50 had been holding on to it for years, waiting. There were rumors of old tapes, private recordings from parties thrown in mansions where cameras weren't supposed to exist. And if those tapes surfaced, it wouldn't just be Diddy or Usher or Justin in the spotlight, it would burn through the industry like wildfire. And still, no one had responded directly. Diddy hadn't said a word. Usher had posted a photo of a beach with no caption. Bieber had gone completely dark, not even logging into his socials. It was like the weight of the footage had frozen them all. Fans took that silence and turned it into fuel. Fan theories turned to full-blown exposés. People connected the dots between past scandals, rewatched documentaries, and clipped old interviews where nervous laughter now sounded like a cry for help. People began talking about Hollywood again, not the polished side we're shown, but the hidden parts. The parties behind the parties. The names you're not supposed to say. And right at the center of that renewed focus was this one moment. One clip. One room. It was no longer about the footage. That part had already done its job. What mattered now was everything it triggered, the silence, the fear, the shifting alliances. Whispers turned into movements. A few smaller celebrities started hinting at past experiences in cryptic posts, using phrases like, "we always knew," or "not surprised." Suddenly, stories long buried started resurfacing, not from the top-tier stars, but from assistants, makeup artists, stylists, dancers, people who had been in the rooms but never in front of the cameras. They didn't name names outright, but they didn't have to. Their timelines, their subtle phrasing, the way they shared images or emojis, it all pointed in the same direction. And then, for the first time, it became too big to ignore. An independent media outlet published a full investigative breakdown, not gossip, but a detailed, verified report of previous lawsuits, testimonies, and interviews, some from years ago, some from sealed settlements. Suddenly, people who had once been dismissed or ignored were being quoted in front-page articles. Screenshots of court documents went viral. Allegations once whispered became real headlines. The clip, the one 50 Cent released, was now seen as the spark that lit the fuse, but the bomb itself had been building for years. Questions started forming that went far beyond one party. Why were these things never questioned before? Why were certain people protected so fiercely? Why did it take a viral moment for the truth to matter? Meanwhile, Diddy's silence had turned into isolation. His team canceled his upcoming event appearances, postponed brand launches, and locked his comments across all platforms. Usher reappeared briefly in a charity post, trying to redirect focus. Justin Bieber, perhaps the quietest of all, made a rare move, not with words, but with action. He unfollowed both Diddy and Usher, a move that might have gone unnoticed any other week, but now it was a digital scream. Screenshots of the unfollow were posted everywhere, dissected in YouTube thumbnails, stitched in TikToks with captions like, "He's done protecting anyone." And through it all, 50 Cent still hadn't said a word. No follow-up. No explanation. Just the video. The internet watched as everyone else tried to recover while the man who dropped the grenade stood back and watched the fire. The story no longer belonged to any of them. It had become a symbol, a moment of reckoning, a mirror held up to the machine behind the music, the power, and the silence. What began as one leaked video was now the opening chapter in a larger unraveling, and the public wasn't letting go. More stories began to surface. Anonymous submissions, screenshots from DMs, private emails that, somehow, made it to journalists. The whispers were now sirens. Diddy's empire, once untouchable, began to show cracks. Partnerships were suspended. Streaming platforms removed certain projects without explanation. Legal teams began issuing carefully worded statements denying wrongdoing while attempting to distance themselves from the storm. But the damage wasn't just corporate, it was personal. Usher, once protected by nostalgia and legacy, now found himself under a microscope. People started questioning his silence over the years, wondering what he'd seen and why he never spoke. Every smile in old footage looked different now. Every song from that era felt like it carried the weight of secrets. And Justin Bieber, the youngest, the most watched, the most scrutinized, became the heart of the public's sympathy. He hadn't said a word, but he didn't need to. His body language in the clip. The way he vanished from social media. The unfollow. It was all people needed to believe that he had been through something he couldn't or wouldn't speak about yet. Comment sections filled with phrases like, "Protect Justin, he's seen too much," and, "You can see it in his eyes." And through all this, the world turned back toward 50 Cent. The one who lit the match. Some praised him as a whistleblower. Others accused him of playing chess with people's lives. But he remained silent. No interviews. No tweets. Just that original post. Still pinned. Still there. Still burning. Because now, everyone understood, the video wasn't meant to explain. It was meant to expose. It didn't need context. It didn't need sound. It just needed to be seen. And once it was, nothing in the industry could ever look the same again. Weeks passed, but the shockwaves didn't fade. They evolved. The industry, once confident in its ability to bury controversy under PR campaigns and time distractions, was forced to reckon with a truth it could no longer silence. The footage had unlocked something deeper, not just one story, but a vault of suppressed moments, whispered trauma, and unspoken power dynamics that had long thrived behind closed doors. People began speaking. Not all at once. Not with cameras in their faces. But slowly. Carefully. Confession turned into conversation, and conversation turned into confrontation. Documentary crews started reaching out. Podcasts began interviewing former insiders. And suddenly, everything changed. This wasn't just a celebrity story anymore. It was a cultural shift. The party culture that had once been glamorized in songs and interviews was now being picked apart by those who had lived through it and come out scarred. Diddy remained out of sight. No events. No interviews. No new music. His silence was no longer seen as poise, it was seen as strategy. A shield. And in that silence, the public turned their attention to accountability. Legal action was now more than a rumor. Civil cases were being prepared. Witnesses were stepping forward. Usher issued a formal statement, long, emotional, but still careful. He spoke of youth, of blurred lines, of trusting too easily. It wasn't a confession, but it wasn't a denial either. He ended it with a promise to support efforts for transparency and healing in the industry. Justin Bieber stayed mostly silent, but was seen attending therapy, traveling with close family, and reconnecting with friends outside the industry. For many, his retreat was the most human thing he could have done. He didn't owe the world his pain, and that's what made people respect him more. And 50 Cent. He never posted again about the video. But he didn't have to. What he dropped was a trigger, not a takedown. A ripple that became a tidal wave. People still debated his motives. Some said he just wanted revenge. Others believed he was the only one brave enough to do what no one else could. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear: he changed the game. Because sometimes, it doesn't take a scandal to burn everything down. Sometimes, all it takes, is a camera. The impact rippled beyond just the music industry. Political figures, advocacy groups, former child stars, they all began chiming in, not just about the footage, but about the ecosystem that allowed moments like that to happen without question for so long. What once would have been dismissed as tabloid noise was now the center of serious cultural debate. Late-night talk shows, morning news panels, even academic forums began discussing the layers beneath the clip, the unchecked power of elite circles, the blurred lines of mentorship and exploitation, and the way fame can be used as both armor and weapon. A cultural shift was underway. Artists who had once stayed neutral began unfollowing Diddy publicly. One by one, collaborators, old friends, even loyal insiders began putting distance between themselves and the controversy. What once looked like a throne was beginning to look like a cage. Journalists started uncovering additional footage, blurry photographs from older events, and suddenly people were realizing, this wasn't a single incident, this was a pattern. Documentaries were pitched, long-form exposés went into development, and networks that had once bowed to star power were now using that same power to interrogate itself. A story like this couldn't be controlled anymore. The people had taken it. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt powerless around fame, silenced in the shadow of influence, or ignored behind the velvet ropes. The narrative had shifted from shock to justice. Survivors from other industries began using the moment to speak their own truths. Music was just the beginning. The wound had been opened, and the public had no intention of letting it close without answers. Diddy remained out of sight. No public appearance. No rebuttal. No lawsuit. No denial. Just silence. And as days passed, that silence felt less like strategy and more like surrender. His image, once built on charisma and control, was fading. Not by force. By exposure. 50 Cent, still saying nothing, still posting jokes unrelated to the chaos, had become something else, not a hero, not a villain, but a spark. The kind you only need once, to change the temperature of an entire room forever.